Malcolm Rifkind, I mean, do you believe the Muslim Brotherhood are behind the uprising, the people fighting the official forces in Homs and elsewhere?
Well, it's a broad-based opposition. I've no doubt the Muslim Brotherhood are part of that opposition. But what we've just heard from your Russian contributor is an example of the absolute moral bankruptcy of Russia and of its government at this moment. The sheer intensity of the conflict that has erupted today is a direct consequence of Russia's veto in the Security Council. Russia has blood on its hands because of that decision that it took.
If the veto had not been exercised, what would have changed against the fighting this week? I mean, the Russians say there would have still been a lot of fighting.
By definition, if they had not used their veto, we would have had a United Nations Security Council resolution. 13 of the 15 countries voted in favour of it. If Russia and China at the least had abstained, that would have been an unambiguous message to Damascus that further action would follow from the Security Council if they continued with this indiscriminate slaughter of their own citizens.
Let's put that to Mr. Dolgov. What do you say to that? Professor Dolgov, sorry.
Really, I can say that there is opposition forces in Syria and opposition people in Syria, inside of Syria. But we know also that in two biggest cities in Syria, in Damascus and in Aleppo, where living approximately a half of population of Syria. So now population of Syria is 22 million, and in Damascus and in Aleppo living approximately 10 million people. And in these two cities there is not any protests against
I think that is, even if that is rubbish, we have seen on television, we've seen reports in suburbs of Damascus, a strong opposition presence, which itself was suppressed by the Syrian government in a ruthless fashion.
Now, I suspect there's not going to be much agreement between Russia and Britain on this.
Russia and the rest of the world, I think.
And China as well. Well, what should we, Britain, France, America, do now? I mean, after all, there is an EU arms embargo on supplying weapons.
Yes, I think one's got to think of this not just as Europe or the West. We have a unanimity of view with the Arab League representing all the Arab countries other than Syria itself. We have Turkey, the most crucial country in the region, a neighbour of Syria, and we have the international community, the European Union, all who are putting maximum pressure on Syria. Two things are required, I believe. First of all, any action we can take of giving practical support to the insurgents will be of enormous importance to the morale of these incredibly courageous people who for 11 months...
But that can't include weapons?
Not at this stage. No, it cannot include weapons at this stage for all the reasons we understand. But any demonstrations of support, practical and indeed diplomatic in form of sanctions, has a powerful impact in saying to these people, you are not alone. The other thing I think we need seriously to consider, the international community led by the Arab League and Turkey, is the possibility of a total economic embargo on the Syrian government. Already we have sanctions on oil. Already their tourism industry has been destroyed. Only by maximum pressure that will bring, quite literally, the collapse of that economy can we force the Syrian government to stop doing what they are doing at this moment in time.
Foreign Minister Lavrov has said that the Assad regime would like to see a continued and expanded Arab League mission in Syria. Would that be helpful?
The Arab League, that's for the Arab League to decide. They sent a mission there. They were greeted by hundreds of thousands of protesters, not just the small number that your Russian colleague has suggested. The Arab League itself said, we are withdrawing our mission because the Syrian government are not keeping their promises. Everything they say to us is bogus. We are not getting the kind of cooperation needed. And that's been the history of Assad and his regime over the last 11 months. The fact that Mr. Lavrov today can, with a straight face, say that Mr. Assad has said he is working to end violence is such blatant hypocrisy. The Russian government is not only betraying people of Syria, it's destroying its whole future in the Middle East, because they will not be forgiven for the way they are behaving. The Chinese are also important, but it's the Russians who are causing it.
But equally, if this does come to a proxy war with maybe the Qataris, the Saudis, Turks organising some kind of
Not a proxy war, an economic embargo.
But there's fighting going on at the moment.
Indeed, there
a
is.
suggestion that this could turn into what we saw in the Lebanon during the 1980s.
I don't have evidence of this, but I would be very surprised if the Qataris and some of the Gulf states are not already providing military support to some of the insurgents within Syria. I think that's what happened in Libya. I think it's entirely possible it's happening now.
And you'd back that?
Well, I can understand why it's happening. Frankly, if people are trying to make peaceful protest and they are mown down in their thousands, inevitably they will turn to violence. And what we are having is not the possibility of a civil war. In all practical senses, the civil war has already begun.
Malcolm Rifkind and Mr. Dolgov, Professor Dolgov, thank you both very much.